So let's begin. This weekend, for the first time, I'm experimenting with starting off talking about the story of two societies. These are societies that in the last half of the 20th century found themselves in deep trouble, real political, spiritual peril, and started to dig themselves out. One is a superpower. In that sense, feels itself as invincible and in charge of taking care of the whole world. And midway through the 20th century, a movement started, a grassroots movement within this society to do something about institutionalized racism, about laws that actually promoted, legitimized, and promoted fundamental racism in the society. It was a movement that started in the church. It was a movement that changed the political wind and accomplished what politics could not, which was to begin the process of cleaning things up and bringing the society into alignment with the principles that it had articulated at its founding. Another society was not a superpower, but it was a country that was growing economically very quickly, had enormous resources, and found itself isolated in the world of nations because it too had a set of laws that institutionalized racism. Again, a grassroots movement, political and secular, but also in the churches, grew up and in alignment with the global movement brought about the official end of that political system and the beginning of a process of bringing that country into alignment with ultimately the universal principles upon which it was founded and brought it back into the community of nations. Now, of course, I'm talking about the United States of America and South Africa. We are here to focus on global issues, but in particular to focus on another society that I feel is in a deep hole for the same reasons, and to talk about and witness the beginnings of a civil society grassroots movement that will succeed where politics have obviously failed, to bring that society into line with at least some of the principles that it articulated at its founding, to be a democratic state for all its citizens. But also, speaking now very personally as a Jew, I'm not just talking about the state of Israel. I'm talking about the Jewish people. We're in big trouble. Our situation as a people, whatever we are, whether we're an ethnicity, a religious faith group, a nationality, I don't want to go down that road, but we are facing a crisis that is fundamental and urgent. About 2 years ago, I was at a conference in Boston. Ilan Pappé, who's the author of this book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, spoke at this conference. And he used the G word. This was in early 2009, in the direct aftermath of the Gaza, the bombardment and the invasion of Gaza. And he said, what we are seeing in Gaza is Israel's genocidal project against the Palestinian people. He didn't hold back from using that word. And he said, it's just the beginning, it's a test. Wait and see, because it's gaining force, and this is what Israel is about. And as an Israeli, by the way, in exile, he's in the UK, he expresses what more and more Israelis are starting to express, which is a sense of urgency and a real plaintive cry, please help us. Our government, our country is taking us over a cliff. Our dream is destroyed if it's not already gone, and we are in big trouble. And this is what I find myself more and more in the position saying, I'm not an Israeli. And yet, as the sainted Tony Judd recently said a few years ago in a speech, somebody was challenging him about why are you speaking for Israel? You know, Israel and the Jews are not the same thing. He said, yes, but that's been the whole policy of Israel, is to make that not true, is to say Israel and the Jewish people are the same. And I will speak for Israel as a Jew because Israel claims to speak for me. And I'm angry at Israel, he says. I'm angry, I'm horrified, I'm scared. And as a Jew and as an American, this is what I speak to. Because I may not get to it later, I just want to share with you also, I'm starting to really do my homework and learn the history of the civil rights movement here and of the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. I tend to quote from a letter from the Birmingham jail a lot in various venues, but I know less. I don't have a real depth of knowledge about the history of the movement, and especially with South Africa. And 2 years ago, just recently, I was at a conference in Lebanon on theology, and I met a Dutch pastor, and who'd really done a lot of work in South Africa. He told me an amazing story that I had not heard. Some of you may be familiar with this story. In 1982, the National Association of Reformed Churches, which apparently is an international organization, had a meeting in Ottawa, Canada. Anybody know this story? 1982, Ottawa? Yeah, you know it. And if I've got any of it wrong, you'll have a chance. And I'm filling in the blanks. The history, I'm having trouble getting a real deep sense of what happened, but they have, at this conference, which was ecumenical and international, in terms of the churches, they had some kind of a ceremony, which was sort of a Lord's Supper ceremony, although it was not kind of a church kind of Eucharist, but it had to do with sitting together and partaking of the host. It was a communion, and there were a number of, and this is 1982, South Africa, there were a number of black and colored pastors from the South African Church, Reformed Church. And they refused to sit with the rest, with their colleagues. They said, we can't do this at home. We won't do it here. And the background is that in the mid-19th century, the Dutch Reformed Church made a decision that they would separate the churches and that the non-whites would have their own church. And apparently that became the basis for the political system of apartheid, which was officially adopted in 1948. And so these white pastors and church officials in Ottawa in 1982, as a result of the action of these South African pastors, declared themselves and the entire Reformed Church in status confessionis. In other words, we cannot move forward. We cannot take another step forward until we deal with this issue which threatens the very foundations of our faith. They effectively, and this is where I can't get quite clear on the history, apparently they effectively excommunicated or censured the churches in South Africa, put them really in a corner and said, you have to fix this. We're in status confessionis. The point I want to make, and you can go get coffee now and eat muffins, because this is really the point I want to make, is that this is all about a call to the church, the global church, but especially the American church. You know, the parallels with South Africa and with the civil rights movement here go as far as they go, and then they stop. But as far as they go, it is extremely powerful. And what I discovered when I came back from 2006, which was my sort of moment of truth and wake-up call, when I went to Palestine for the first time and saw the occupation for the first time, even though I had lived in Israel many times as a young man and been there a million times, this is what I discovered when I came